You never imagine that your own children are hiding dark secrets until the day it all comes to light. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. You might think this is just some drama story, but the truth this mother discovered will shock you. At first, everything seemed normal. The children were playing, laughing, and going about their daily routines. But then she started noticing little strange signs, interrupted conversations, suspicious looks. One night, while searching one of their rooms, she found something terrible. A secret so heavy that her family life would never be the same again. Lena's heart rate quickened as she made her way towards the illumination, her heels clicking against the hardwood floors, each step echoing in the unsettling silence. As she rounded the corner into the kitchen, Lena's eyes fell upon her sister Raina, perched on a bar stool at the island counter. Raina's fingers were wrapped tightly around a mug of what smelled like chamomile tea, her knuckles white with tension. The woman's usually vibrant face was ashen, her eyes red-rimmed and puffy as if she'd been crying. "Raina." Lena's voice came out as a whisper, laden with concern. "What's wrong? Where are the kids?" Raina's gaze snapped up to meet Lena's, a mixture of relief and dread washing over her features. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Instead, she took a shaky breath, her shoulders trembling with the effort. Lena's mind raced through 1,000 terrible scenarios. Had there been an accident? Was someone hurt? The silence stretched between them, thick and oppressive, until Raina finally found her voice. "Lena, I don't know how to tell you this," Raina began, her words barely audible. "I saw something today. Something I can't unsee." Lena's breath caught in her throat as she lowered herself onto the stool across from her sister. "What did you see, Raina? Please, just tell me." Raina's eyes darted away, unable to meet Lena's gaze. "It's about the twins," she said, her voice cracking. "I found them in Mila's room earlier today. They were... Lena leaned forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "They were what, Raina?" "Spit it out!" "They were touching each other, Lena," Raina blurted out, her words tumbling over one another. "In ways siblings should never touch. It was wrong. So wrong." The world seemed to tilt on its axis as Lena processed her sister's words. Her mind rebelled against the very notion, unable to reconcile the image of her sweet, innocent children with the disturbing scene Raina described. "No," Lena said, shaking her head vehemently. "No, you must have misunderstood. Liam's and Mila would never... They're just children, for God's sake." Raina reached across the counter, grasping Lena's hand in her own. "I wish I was wrong, Lena. I truly do. But what I saw, there's no mistaking it. They were exploring each other's bodies in a way that goes far beyond normal childhood curiosity." Lena yanked her hand away, standing up so abruptly that the stool scraped loudly against the floor. "You're lying!" she hissed, anger flaring hot in her chest. "How dare you accuse my children of such depravity?" "Lena, please," Raina pleaded, tears welling in her eyes. "I would never make something like this up. I love those kids as if they were my own. But what I saw today, it was disturbing. We need to address this before it goes any further." Lena paced the kitchen, her mind a whirlwind of denial and disbelief. How could this be happening? Her children, her precious twins, engaging in such behavior. It was unthinkable. "Where are they now?" Lena demanded, her voice trembling. "In their rooms," Raina replied softly. I didn't know what to do. I thought it best to wait for you to come home before we decided how to handle this." Lena nodded, more to herself than to Raina. She needed to see her children, to look into their eyes and prove to herself that Raina's accusations were unfounded. Without another word, she strode out of the kitchen and up the stairs, her sister's worried gaze following her every step. The second floor of the house was quiet, save for the soft whirring of a fan coming from Liam's room. Lena paused outside Mila's door, her hand hovering over the doorknob. Taking a deep breath, she pushed it open. Mila lay curled up in her bed, her chest rising and falling with the steady rhythm of sleep. Her long, dark hair fanned out on the pillow, framing her angelic face. Lena's heart clenched at the sight. How could anyone think this innocent child capable of such acts? She crossed the hall to Liam's room, finding him sprawled across his bed, one leg dangling off the side. A comic book lay open on his chest, rising and falling with each breath. Lena studied his face, searching for any sign of the depravity Raina had described, but found only the peaceful expression of a sleeping child. As she made her way back downstairs, Lena's mind was a battlefield of conflicting emotions. On one hand, the sight of her sleeping children, looking so pure and innocent, made her want to dismiss Raina's claims entirely. But a nagging doubt had taken root in the back of her mind, a seed of suspicion that refused to be ignored. Raina was still in the kitchen, her posture deflated, her eyes red and swollen. Lena approached her sister, torn between anger and the need for answers. "Tell me everything," Lena said, her voice low and controlled. "I need to know exactly what you saw." As Raina recounted the scene she had witnessed earlier that day, Lena felt her world begin to crumble. The details were too specific, too disturbing to be a simple misunderstanding. Yet, and she clung to the hope that there was an innocent explanation, that her children were merely victims of a terrible misinterpretation. "I don't know what to think," Lena admitted, sinking back onto the stool. "Part of me wants to believe you're mistaken, that this is all some horrible misunderstanding. But another part, I know," Raina said softly, reaching out to squeeze Lena's hand. "I wish I was wrong, Lena. I really do. But we can't ignore this. We need to figure out what's going on and how to help them." Lena nodded, feeling utterly lost. How had her perfect little family come to this? What could have led her children down such a dark path? And more importantly, how could she protect them and guide them back to innocence? As the night wore on, Lena's mind raced with possibilities and plans. She knew that the coming days would be challenging, filled with difficult conversations and hard decisions. But as she finally crawled into her own bed in the early hours of the morning, one thought crystallized in her mind. She would do whatever it took to save her children, to shield them from the darkness that threatened to engulf their young lives. Little did Lena know that the true source of the darkness lurked much closer to home, and that the journey ahead would test her in ways she could never have imagined. The following days passed in a haze of uncertainty and mounting tension for Lena. Every interaction with her children was tinged with a new awareness, a heightened sensitivity to their behavior that left her constantly on edge. She found herself scrutinizing their every move, searching for signs of the disturbing conduct Raina had described. Liam's and Mila, for their part, seemed blissfully unaware of the turmoil brewing beneath the surface of their mother's calm exterior. They went about their days with the carefree abandon of youth, laughing, playing, and squabbling as siblings do. Yet, Lena couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. It was the little things that began to gnaw at her conscience. The way Mila's hand would linger a moment too long on Liam's arm when they passed each other in the hallway. The furtive glances they shared across the dinner table, laden with an unspoken understanding that sent chills down Lena's spine. She tried to rationalize these observations, to convince herself that she was reading too much into innocent gestures. But the seed of doubt planted by Raina's revelation had taken root and was growing with each passing day. One afternoon, as Lena was folding laundry in the living room, she overheard a hushed conversation between the twins in the adjacent playroom. Their voices were low, almost conspiratorial, and though she couldn't make out the words, the tone sent a jolt of unease through her body. She found herself creeping closer to the doorway, her heart pounding in her chest as she strained to listen. "We can't, Mila," Liam's whispered, his voice tinged with a mixture of fear and excitement. "What if Mom finds out?" "She won't," Mila replied, her tone reassuring yet somehow older than her years. "We'll be careful, I promise." Lena's breath caught in her throat. What were they planning? What secret were they keeping from her? She was on the verge of bursting into the room and demanding answers when the sound of the front door opening announced her husband Damien's arrival home from work. The moment shattered, and Lena retreated to the laundry, her mind reeling. She greeted Damien with a distracted kiss, unable to shake the feeling that she was losing control of her family, that some insidious force was worming its way into the fabric of their lives. That night, as Damien snored softly beside her, Lena lay awake, her thoughts a tumultuous storm. She knew she needed to do something, to confront the situation head-on, but the fear of what she might uncover paralyzed her. What if Raina was right? What if her children were truly engaging in behavior that went far beyond the bounds of normal sibling relationships? The very thought made her stomach churn. Unable to sleep, Lena slipped out of bed and padded down the hallway to check on the twins. She paused outside Liam's room, her hand on the doorknob, when a muffled sound from within made her freeze. It was barely audible, but in the stillness of the night, it rang out like a klaxon in Lena's ears. A giggle. Mila's giggle. With trembling fingers, Lena eased the door open a crack, peering into the darkness of her son's room. What she saw made her blood run cold. Two small figures were huddled together on Liam's bed, their outlines barely visible in the faint moonlight streaming through the window. They were pressed close, far too close for Lena's comfort, and as her eyes adjusted to the gloom, she could make out the unmistakable shape of Mila's nightgown bunched up around her waist. Lena's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a gasp. She wanted to burst into the room, to tear them apart and demand answers, but her body refused to move. She stood there, frozen in horror, as the reality of the situation crashed over her like a tidal wave. It was true. All of it. Raina hadn't been mistaken or exaggerating. Her children, her precious babies, were engaged in something far beyond their years, something that threatened to destroy the very foundations of their family. As quietly as she could, Lena closed the door and retreated to her bedroom, her mind reeling. She slipped back into bed beside Damien, her body shaking with silent sobs. How had it come to this? Where had she gone wrong as a mother? And more importantly, what could she do to save her children from this dark path they had stumbled upon? The next morning, Lena went through the motions of her daily routine in a daze. She made breakfast, packed lunches, and sent the twins off to school with forced smiles and trembling hands. As soon as they were out the door, she collapsed onto the kitchen floor, her body racked with sobs. It was there that Damien found her an hour later, having returned home after forgetting some important documents for work. He knelt beside her, concern etched across his features, and gathered her into his arms. "Lena, sweetheart, what's wrong?" he asked, his voice soft and worried. Through her tears, Lena poured out everything: Raina's initial discovery, her own observations, and the heart-wrenching scene she had witnessed the night before. Damien listened in stunned silence, his face growing paler with each revelation. When she finished, Damien sat back, running a hand through his hair. "Are you sure?" he asked, his voice hoarse. "I mean, kids experiment sometimes. Maybe we're blowing this out of proportion." Lena shook her head vehemently. "You didn't see what I saw, Damien. This isn't normal childhood curiosity. It's something else. Something's wrong with our babies, and we need to figure out what it is." Damien nodded slowly, his brow furrowed in thought. "Okay," he said after a long moment. "Okay, we'll talk to them when they get home from school. We'll get to the bottom of this, I promise." But as the day wore on, Lena's unease only grew. She couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the situation than met the eye, that some crucial piece of the puzzle was eluding her. And so, driven by a desperate need for answers, she made a decision that would change the course of their lives forever. While Damien was at work and the twins were at school, Lena drove to a nearby electronics store. With shaking hands, she purchased a set of small wireless cameras, her cheeks burning with shame as she avoided the cashier's curious gaze. Back at home, she spent hours carefully hiding the cameras throughout the house, in the living room, the playroom, the hallway outside the twins' bedrooms. Each placement felt like a betrayal, a violation of the trust that should exist between a mother and her children. But Lena pushed these thoughts aside, focusing on the urgent need to understand and address whatever was happening under her roof. As she activated the last camera, linking it to the app on her phone, Lena felt a mix of dread and determination wash over her. Whatever secrets lurked in the shadows of her home, whatever darkness had taken hold of her family, she would drag it into the light. And then, armed with the truth, she would fight with every fiber of her being to reclaim the innocence that had been stolen from her children. Little did Lena know that the truth she sought would shatter her world in ways she could never have imagined, forcing her to confront not only the actions of her children but the deep-seated betrayals that had been festering at the very heart of her family for far too long. The days that followed Lena's covert installation of the cameras were a torturous exercise in patience and self-control. Every moment she spent in the presence of her family felt like a performance, a carefully choreographed dance of normalcy that threatened to unravel at any second. She found herself hyper-aware of every glance, every touch, every whispered conversation between the twins, her mind racing to interpret and analyze each interaction through the lens of her newfound suspicion. Damien, for his part, seemed determined to carry on as if nothing had changed. He laughed and joked with the children at dinner, helped them with their homework, and continued his usual routines with an ease that both relieved and infuriated Lena. How could he be so calm, so seemingly oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface of their family life? At night, when the house finally fell silent, Lena would retreat to her home office, hunched over her laptop as she meticulously reviewed the footage from the hidden cameras. Hours slipped by unnoticed as she scoured every frame, searching for any sign of the inappropriate behavior she had witnessed that fateful night. For days, the cameras revealed nothing out of the ordinary. Lena watched as her children went about their daily lives, playing video games, arguing over the remote control, doing their chores with the reluctant acquiescence of youth. She began to wonder if perhaps she had overreacted, if the stress and shock of Raina's initial revelation had caused her to see things that weren't really there. But on the 5th night of her clandestine surveillance, everything changed. It was well past midnight, and Lena was on the verge of calling it quits for the evening when movement on one of the camera feeds caught her eye. The hallway outside the twins' bedrooms, normally dark and still at this hour, suddenly came to life with activity. Lena leaned closer to the screen, her heart racing as she watched the scene unfold. To her surprise, it wasn't the twins who emerged from their rooms, but 2 adult figures. Lena's breath caught in her throat as she recognized Damien, her husband, creeping down the hallway with exaggerated care. Behind him, moving with equal stealth, was Raina, her sister. Confusion and dread warred within Lena as she watched the pair make their way towards the guest bedroom at the end of the hall. What were they doing up at this hour, and why the need for such secrecy? With trembling fingers, Lena switched to the camera feed from the guest room. The image was grainy in the low light, but there was no mistaking what she saw. Damien and Raina entered the room, closing the door behind them with a soft click. For a moment, they stood facing each other, an unspoken tension crackling between them. Then, in a flurry of movement that made Lena's stomach lurch, they came together in a passionate embrace. Clothes were shed with frantic urgency, hands roaming over familiar territory, lips meeting in heated kisses that spoke of long-suppressed desire. Lena felt as if she had been plunged into icy water. Her husband and her sister, the 2 people she trusted most in the world, engaged in a betrayal so profound it threatened to shatter the very foundations of her life. But the horror didn't end there. As Lena sat frozen, unable to tear her eyes away from the nightmarish scene unfolding on her screen, movement in the hallway caught her attention once more. She switched back to the hallway camera, her heart pounding so loudly she was sure it would wake the entire house. There, peeking around the corner of their bedroom doors, were Liam's and Mila. Their young faces were a mixture of curiosity and shock as they watched their father and aunt disappear into the guest room. Lena could see the twins exchange a look, a silent communication passing between them that sent chills down her spine. With a sense of creeping dread, Lena followed the children's movements as they crept down the hallway, pressing their ears to the guest room door. The sounds emanating from within were muffled but unmistakable, and Lena watched in anguished silence as understanding dawned on her children's faces. After what felt like an eternity, The twins retreated to Mila's room. Lena switched to the camera there, her whole body shaking as she waited to see what would happen next. What she witnessed in the following minutes would haunt her for years to come. Liam's and Mila, their young minds struggling to process what they had seen and heard, began to imitate the actions of their father and aunt. With a clinical detachment that belied their years, they undressed each other, their movements a grotesque parody of the adult intimacy they had just witnessed. Lena's world tilted on its axis as the full weight of the situation crashed down upon her. The inappropriate behavior between her children, the secret she had been so desperately trying to uncover, it all stemmed from this. Her husband's infidelity with her own sister had set in motion a chain of events that had corrupted the innocence of her precious babies. Overwhelmed by a toxic cocktail of rage, betrayal, and heartbreak, Lena slammed her laptop shut. The room spun around her as she struggled to breathe, her mind reeling from the enormity of what she had discovered. In the span of a single night, every certainty in her life had been upended. Her marriage, her family, her very understanding of the world, all of it lay in ruins at her feet. And at the center of it all were her children, unwitting victims of the adults' transgressions. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Lena sat in the darkness of her office, her face streaked with dried tears. The path ahead was unclear, fraught with pain and difficult decisions. But one thing was certain: nothing would ever be the same again. With a deep, shuddering breath, Lena steeled herself for the confrontation to come. She would face this head-on, armed with the truth and driven by an unshakable determination to protect her children at any cost. The reckoning was at hand, and Lena was ready to fight for the future of her family. As the first rays of sunlight began to filter through the curtains, Lena sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had long since gone cold. She had not slept, her mind a tumultuous whirlwind of emotions and half-formed plans. The weight of what she had witnessed pressed down on her, threatening to crush her beneath its awful truth. The sound of footsteps on the stairs made her stiffen. She knew it would be Damien, rising early as he always did for his morning run. Lena's grip on her mug tightened, her knuckles turning white with the strain. How many mornings had she watched him leave, blissfully unaware of the betrayal that lay beneath his easy smile and gentle kiss goodbye? The thought made bile rise in her throat. Damien entered the kitchen, his face etched with surprise at finding Lena awake so early. "Hey, honey," he said, his voice tentative. "You're up early. Everything okay?" Lena's laugh was hollow, devoid of any warmth. "Okay?" she repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. "No, Damien." "Everything is most certainly not okay." Confusion flickered across Damien's face, quickly replaced by concern as he took in Lena's disheveled appearance and red-rimmed eyes. "Lena, what's wrong? What happened?" "What happened?" Lena's voice rose, trembling with barely contained fury. "What happened is that I saw you, Damien. I saw everything." The color drained from Damien's face as understanding dawned. He opened his mouth to speak, but Lena cut him off, her words sharp enough to draw blood. "Don't you dare try to deny it," she hissed, rising from her chair. "I saw you with Raina last night, in our home, in the bed where our guests sleep." Damien's shoulders sagged, defeat written in every line of his body. "Lena, I can explain," he began, but the words sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Explain." Lena's laugh was bitter, tinged with hysteria. Please, Damien, do explain how you ended up in bed with my sister. Explain how you could betray me, betray our family, in such a heinous way." As if summoned by the commotion, Raina appeared in the kitchen doorway, her face a mask of fear and guilt. "Lena," she breathed, her voice barely audible. "Oh God, Lena, I'm so sorry." Lena whirled to face her sister, her eyes blazing with a fury that made Raina take an involuntary step back. "Sorry," she spat. You're sorry? Do you have any idea what you've done?" Raina's eyes filled with tears as she stammered out apologies, but Lena was beyond hearing them. Her gaze swung between her husband and her sister. The two people she had trusted most in the world, now revealed as the architects of her family's destruction. It was a mistake, Damien pleaded, reaching out to touch Lena's arm. She recoiled from his touch as if burned. It never should have happened. We got carried away, but I swear, it meant nothing. Meant nothing. Lena's voice was dangerously low. It meant everything, Damien. It meant the end of our marriage, the end of our family, the end of our children's innocence. At the mention of the children, both Damien and Raina paled. What do you mean? Raina asked, her voice trembling. Lena's laugh was devoid of humor. Oh, you didn't know. Your little tryst had an audience last night. Liam's and Mila saw everything. The horror that dawned on their faces would have been satisfying if Lena wasn't so consumed by her own pain and rage. She watched as the full implications of their actions sank in, as they realized the far-reaching consequences of their betrayal. The twins? Damien's voice cracked. They saw us. They didn't just see you, Lena said, her voice flat and cold. They learned from you. All those times we worried about their behavior, all those moments of inappropriate touching and secrecy, it all stemmed from you, from what you showed them was acceptable between family members. The silence that followed was deafening. Raina had collapsed into a chair, her body racked with sobs. Damien stood frozen, his face a mask of anguish and self-loathing. Lena looked at them both. These two people who had once been her whole world, and felt nothing but a vast, yawning emptiness. I want you both out of this house, she said, her voice devoid of emotion. Now, today, I never want to see either of you again. Lena, please, Raina begged, reaching out to her sister. We can fix this. We can make it right. Make it right. Lena's voice rose to a shout. How? How do we undo the damage you've done to my children? How do we erase the images from their minds, the behaviors they've learned? Tell me, Raina, how do we fix that? Neither Damien nor Raina had an answer. They stood there, broken and defeated, as the full weight of their actions crashed down upon them. Get out, Lena said again, her voice barely above a whisper. Pack your things and leave. I'll explain to the children. Somehow. But I want you gone before they wake up. As Damien and Raina shuffled out of the kitchen, heads bowed in shame, Lena sank back into her chair. The house around her, once a haven of love and family, now felt tainted, corrupted by the betrayal that had taken place within its walls. She sat there as the sounds of hurried packing filtered down from upstairs, as hushed conversations and muffled sobs drifted through the air. And when, an hour later, she heard the front door close with a final, damning click, Lena allowed herself to break down. Tears streamed down her face as she wept for the life she had lost, for the innocence stolen from her children, for the trust that had been so callously shattered. But beneath the sorrow, a steely resolve began to take shape. She would rebuild from this. She would find a way to help her children heal, to guide them back to the path of innocence and trust. It would be the hardest thing she had ever done. But as Lena sat in the quiet aftermath of her world's collapse, she made a solemn vow. She would not let this betrayal define her family's future. From the ashes of this destruction, she would forge a new life, one built on honesty, strength, and an unwavering commitment to protecting the two precious souls who needed her now more than ever. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor, Lena dried her tears and stood. There was work to be done, hard conversations to be had, and a long road of healing ahead. But she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the truth and driven by a mother's fierce, unyielding love. As the morning sun climbed higher in the sky, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor, Lena dried her tears and stood. There was work to be done, hard conversations to be had, and a long road of healing ahead. But she was ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, armed with the truth and driven by a mother's fierce, unyielding love. The sound of small feet padding down the stairs sent a jolt through Lena's body. She took a deep breath, steeling herself for what was to come. How does one explain to children the complexities of adult betrayal? How does a mother protect the innocence of her babies when that very innocence has already been tarnished? Liam's and Mila appeared in the kitchen doorway, their young faces etched with confusion as they took in the unusual silence of the house and their mother's tear-stained face. "Mom?" Mila's voice was small, uncertain. "Where's Dad? And Aunt Raina?" Lena's heart clenched at the question, but she forced a gentle smile onto her face. "Come here, my loves," she said, opening her arms wide. The twins hesitated for only a moment before rushing into her embrace, their small bodies warm against hers. For a long moment, Lena simply held them, breathing in the scent of their hair, feeling the steady beat of their hearts against her chest. Then, slowly, she pulled back, looking into their questioning eyes. "We need to have a very important talk," she began, her voice soft but firm. "Something happened last night, something that's going to change things for our family. But I want you both to know that none of this is your fault, and that I love you more than anything in this world." Liam's and Mila exchanged a glance, a flicker of understanding passing between them that made Lena's stomach churn. How much had they truly comprehended of what they'd witnessed? "Is this about what we saw?" Liam's asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "With Dad and Aunt Raina?" Lena nodded, swallowing hard against the lump in her throat. "Yes, sweetheart, it is. What you saw, what they were doing, it was very wrong." "But why?" Mila interjected, her brow furrowed in confusion. They looked like they were having fun, like they loved each other. The innocence of the question was like a knife to Lena's heart. She took a deep breath, choosing her words carefully. "Love is a complicated thing, my darling. And sometimes, even adults can make terrible mistakes. What your father and aunt did was a betrayal of me, of our family, and of the trust we all shared." "Is that why they're gone?" Liam's asked, his lower lip trembling slightly. Lena nodded, pulling both children close once more. "Yes, that's why they're gone. They made choices that hurt our family very deeply, and now we need some time apart to heal." "But what about us?" Mila's voice was muffled against Lena's shirt. We did things too, like what we saw them doing. Are we bad?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implication. Lena's mind raced, searching for the right words to address this delicate issue without further damaging her children's sense of self. "No, my love," she said firmly, pulling back to look both twins in the eye. "You are not bad. You are good, wonderful children who were put in a very confusing situation. What you saw and what you did afterward, it's not something children should ever have to deal with. But it's not your fault. We were just curious," Liam's mumbled, his cheeks flushing with shame. "And we wanted to understand what it meant." Lena nodded, her heart breaking for the innocence that had been stolen from her babies. "I understand that, sweetheart. Curiosity is natural. But there are some things that are only for adults, and what you saw was one of those things. From now on, we're going to have some new rules and boundaries in our house, okay?" The twins nodded solemnly, their eyes wide as they absorbed their mother's words. "First," Lena continued, her voice gentle but firm, "your bodies are your own. No one should touch you in ways that make you uncomfortable, and you shouldn't touch others that way either, not even each other. If anyone ever tries to touch you inappropriately or asks you to touch them, you come straight to me, okay?" "Okay, Mom," they chorused, nodding vigorously. "On second," Lena went on, "and we're going to start having more open conversations about bodies, boundaries, and respect. If you ever have questions or feel confused about something, I want you to come to me, no matter what it is. I promise I'll listen and help you understand." "Even if it's embarrassing?" Mila asked, her voice small. "Especially if it's embarrassing," Lena affirmed, offering a reassuring smile. "And there's nothing you can't talk to me about, okay?" The twins nodded again, some of the tension easing from their small shoulders. "Lastly," Lena said, taking a deep breath, "I want you both to know that what happened with your father and aunt doesn't change how much I love you. We're going to get through this together, as a family. It might be hard sometimes, and there might be days when we're all sad or angry, but we'll face it together." "Can you be brave for me?" Liam's and Mila exchanged a look, then turned back to their mother with determination shining in their eyes. "We can be brave, Mom," Liam said, his little chin jutting out. "We promise." Lena felt a swell of pride and love so intense it nearly took her breath away. She gathered her children close once more, holding them tight as tears slipped silently down her cheeks. They sat like that for a long while, a small island of love and comfort in the sea of uncertainty that stretched out before them. As the morning wore on, Lena began the process of rebuilding their lives. She called the twins, school, arranging for them to have a few days off while the family adjusted to their new reality. She contacted a child psychologist, setting up appointments for both children to help them process what they'd experienced. In the days that followed, Lena threw herself into creating a new normal for her family. She rearranged the furniture in the living room, erasing the subtle reminders of Damien's presence. She filled their days with activities, trips to the park, baking sessions in the kitchen, movie nights cuddled together on the couch. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were nights when Mila woke screaming from nightmares she couldn't articulate. Days when Liam's would retreat into sullen silence, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Moments when Lena herself felt overwhelmed by the enormity of the task before her, questioning every decision and second-guessing her ability to guide her children through this trauma. Yet, slowly but surely, they began to heal. The therapy sessions helped the twins process their confusion and guilt. The open conversations Lena fostered allowed them to ask questions and express their fears without shame. And the unwavering love and support she showered upon them began to rebuild the sense of security that had been so violently shaken. One evening, about a month after that fateful night, Lena sat on the back porch, watching as Liam's and Mila chased fireflies in the gathering dusk. Their laughter, so pure and uninhibited, floated on the warm summer air, wrapping around her like a comforting embrace. As she observed her children, their faces alight with joy and wonder, Lena felt a profound sense of hope blossom in her chest. The road ahead was still long, and there would undoubtedly be more challenges to face. But in that moment, watching her babies reclaim their innocence one firefly at a time, Lena knew with absolute certainty that they would be okay. They were survivors, the three of them, bound together by love, strengthened by adversity, and determined to forge a future filled with light and laughter. And as the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Lena made a silent vow to the universe. She would continue to fight, with every ounce of strength she possessed, to protect the precious innocence of her children, to guide them towards a future where trust, respect, and unconditional love formed the bedrock of their world. And though the path might be difficult, she would walk it with unwavering determination, her children's hands clasped firmly in her own. As night fell fully, Lena called the twins inside. They came running, cheeks flushed and eyes sparkling with the simple joy of childhood. And as she tucked them into bed, pressing gentle kisses to their foreheads, Lena felt a sense of peace settle over her. They were not broken, merely bent. And together, they would straighten and grow stronger than ever before. For in the end, it was not the absence of struggles that defined a family, but the way they faced those struggles together. And in that, Lena knew, they were already victorious. As night fell fully, Lena called the twins inside. They came running, cheeks flushed and eyes sparkling with the simple joy of childhood. And as she tucked them into bed, pressing gentle kisses to their foreheads, Lena felt a sense of peace settle over her. They were not broken, merely bent, and together they would straighten and grow stronger than ever before. For in the end, it was not the absence of struggles that defined a family, but the way they faced those struggles together. And in that, Lena knew, they were already victorious. Chapter 6. Healing and Moving. The weeks turned into months, and slowly but surely, a new rhythm emerged in the household. Lena, determined to reclaim her life and provide stability for her children, threw herself into creating a nurturing environment that fostered healing and growth. One crisp autumn morning, Lena found herself sitting across from her lawyer, finalizing the divorce papers that would officially end her marriage to Damien. As she signed her name on the dotted line, a complex mix of emotions washed over her: relief, sadness, and a surprising sense of liberation. "It's done," the lawyer said softly, gathering the papers. "Are you sure you don't want to pursue any further action against your sister? Given the circumstances, you might have grounds for—" Lena shook her head firmly, cutting him off. "No," she said, her voice steady. "I want this chapter of our lives closed for good. Raina." She paused, swallowing hard against the lump in her throat. "Raina is no longer a part of our family. The best thing she can do for us now is to stay away." As she left the lawyer's office, stepping out into the brisk autumn air, Lena felt as if a weight had been lifted from her shoulders. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in months, she felt truly free to move forward. That evening, as she helped Liam's and Mila with their homework at the kitchen table, Lena made an impromptu decision. "How would you two feel about joining a book club with me?" she asked, smiling at their puzzled expressions. "A book club?" Liam's wrinkled his nose. "Isn't that for old ladies?" Lena laughed, ruffling his hair affectionately. "Not at all. This one is for parents and kids to read together. I thought it might be fun for us to have something new to do as a family." Mila's eyes lit up. "Can we read Harry Potter?" she asked excitedly. "And we'll see what books they have planned," Lena replied, warmth spreading through her chest at her daughter's enthusiasm. "But that sounds like a great suggestion." The book club turned out to be a blessing in disguise. Not only did it provide a regular activity for them to enjoy together, but it also opened up new avenues for communication. As they discussed the characters and their choices, Lena found opportunities to gently reinforce lessons about trust, loyalty, and the importance of making good decisions. Inspired by the positive changes the book club brought to their lives, Lena began to seek out other ways to enrich their family time. She dug out her old easel and paints from the attic, setting up a small studio space in the spare room that had once been Raina's. At first, she painted alone, finding solace in the sweep of brush on canvas. But soon, the twins began to show interest, asking to join her. Before long, their weekends were filled with the sounds of laughter and the scent of acrylic paint as they created colorful masterpieces together. As winter settled over the town, blanketing their world in white, Lena marveled at the progress they had made. The therapy sessions had done wonders for the twins, helping them process their confusion and guilt. While there were still occasional nightmares and moments of sadness, these were becoming fewer and farther between. One snowy afternoon, as they built a lopsided snowman in the backyard, Lena caught sight of a familiar figure standing at the edge of their property. Her heart clenched as she recognized Damien, watching them from a distance, his face a mask of regret and longing. For a moment, their eyes met across the snow-covered lawn. 1,000 unspoken words passed between them, apologies, accusations, explanations. But in the end, Lena simply turned away. She focused her attention back on her children, helping Mila adjust the snowman's carrot nose as Liam's searched for the perfect stones for its smile. Later that night, as she tucked the twins into bed, Mila asked in a small voice, "Mom, do you think Dad misses us?" Lena's heart ached at the question, but she kept her voice calm and steady. "I'm sure he does, sweetheart. But remember what we talked about in therapy. Sometimes, even when people love each other, they make choices that mean they can't be together anymore." Liam's piped up from his bed. "But we're okay. Right, Mom? Even without Dad?" Lena smiled, her eyes shining with unshed tears as she looked at her brave, resilient children. "We're more than okay, my loves. We're strong, and we have each other. That's what matters most." As the months rolled on, their little family unit grew stronger and more tightly knit. Lena found herself rediscovering parts of herself she had forgotten. The artist, the avid reader, the spontaneous adventure seeker who would pack up the car on a whim for a weekend road trip. She joined a support group for single parents, finding solace and strength in sharing her experiences with others who understood. Through the group, she met Sarah, a vivacious single mom with a wicked sense of humor who quickly became a close friend and confidant. It was Sarah who convinced Lena to try online dating, gently pushing her to open her heart to the possibility of new love. "You're not betraying anyone by moving on," Sarah insisted over coffee one day. "You deserve happiness too, you know." Lena's first few attempts at dating were awkward and ended in disappointment, but she persevered. And then, on a crisp spring evening, she met Michael. Michael was kind, patient, and understanding of her complicated past. He had 2 children of his own from a previous marriage, and he approached his relationship with Lena and the twins with gentle care and respect. The first time Michael came over for dinner, Lena watched with a mixture of joy and trepidation as he interacted with Liams and Mila. But her fears were quickly assuaged as she saw the easy rapport he built with them, engaging them in conversations about their interests and making them laugh with his terrible dad jokes. As spring blossomed into summer, Lena found herself truly happy for the first time in what felt like ages. Her relationship with Michael was progressing slowly but steadily, built on a foundation of mutual respect and open communication. The twins were thriving in school and their extracurricular activities, their resilience a constant source of pride and amazement for Lena. One warm evening, as they all sat on the back porch enjoying homemade ice cream, Liams turned to Lena with a serious expression. "Mom," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I think we're going to be okay." Lena felt tears prick at her eyes as she pulled her son close, planting a kiss on the top of his head. "We already are, my love," she said softly. "We already are." As the fireflies began to dance in the gathering dusk, Lena looked around at her little family. Mila was animatedly describing her latest art project to Michael, who listened with genuine interest. Liams was contentedly leaning against her side, his ice cream sticky hand clasped in hers. In that moment, Lena felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The path that had led them here had been fraught with pain and challenges, but they had emerged stronger, more resilient, and more tightly bonded than ever before. She thought back to that terrible night when her world had shattered, and marveled at how far they had come. They had faced the darkness together, and in doing so had found a light within themselves that could never be extinguished. As the stars began to twinkle overhead, Lena made a silent vow to herself and to her children. They would continue to move forward, to grow, to love, and to live with open hearts and minds. The past would always be a part of their story, but it would not define their future. For in the end, it was not the absence of struggles that made a family strong, but the way they faced those struggles together. And in that, Lena knew, they were not just survivors. They were thrivers, ready to embrace whatever adventures life had in store for them next. As night fell fully, wrapping them in its velvet embrace, Lena looked up at the vast expanse of stars above. She felt small in the face of the universe's grandeur, yet also profoundly connected to something greater than herself. In that moment, surrounded by love and laughter, Lena knew with absolute certainty that they were exactly where they were meant to be. The journey of healing and moving on was far from over, but they were on the right path. And as long as they had each other, Lena knew that they could face anything life threw their way, for they were not just a family bound by blood, but a family forged in adversity, strengthened by love, and united in their determination to create a future filled with joy, trust, and unwavering support for one another. As the last rays of sunlight faded from the sky, Lena gathered her children close, breathing in the scent of summer and the promise of tomorrow. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together, stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. And in that knowledge, Lena found a peace and contentment she had never known before, for she had learned the most valuable lesson of all, that true strength comes not from avoiding life's storms, but from learning to dance in the rain. And dance they would, with open hearts and unbreakable spirits, into whatever future awaited them.